Deputy O'Sullivan has the floor.
I want to move on to an issue that is very urgent and it's very serious, and it's an issue that's dominating the work of many of us in the House here, especially those of us in the Dublin and the Greater Dublin area, and I'm on the issue of housing. And what we're seeing is individuals, couples and families facing rent increases of anything from €100 to €400 plus a month increase from the landlords. And it's not because there are major renovations or adjustments to the accommodation, it's because it is a landlord's market. Now, there was a great urgency and energy about the meetings that were called by Minister Kelly before Christmas, but the reality is last month saw the largest ever monthly increase in the number of families living in emergency accommodation in Dublin. And in March, on 60 occasions, there were families who were assessed as being homeless, but there was no accommodation for them. It's inability to pay market rent that's credited by many organisations as the reason for this, and that also includes the low maximum rent levels under rent supplement. Now, last week in a reply to Deputy O'Queen from the Taoiseach, she outlined the new protocol, which is people being dealt with on a case-by-case basis by community welfare organisation, by the community welfare officers. There were 4,000 renegotiated cases. Now, they were the lucky ones, but I'm not sure that that's the most efficient or dignified way to deal with this. But what about those who didn't get a renegotiated case? Well, many of them had to resort to topping up the rent by using some of their social welfare payments. Now, OK, we know that's against rent supplement rules, but it's also having the effect of eating into the household income. It's bringing the household income below the minimum level, and it will eventually lead to further homelessness and further pressures on the accommodation situation. We know that there are 90,000 at least on social housing lists, so rent supplement is the only option for them until the new housing comes on stream. Just one statistic: in January 2009, the rent supplement rate for a family with 2 children in Dublin was €225 a month higher than it is today. So I'm asking for a reality check in relation to rent supplement, in relation to the carte blanche that landlords have, part of which is caused by the mortgage repayments of the buy-to-let landlords, and also we need to take account prevailing market conditions.
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, the government are acutely aware of the problems that Deputy O'Sullivan raises, not just in Dublin but in other locations around the country, particularly the larger towns and cities. And that's why the Minister for the Environment has set out a whole strategy to deal with social and affordable housing, with a €4 billion programme between here and 2020, to deal with the provision of 35,000 new dwellings over the next period of years. And no matter what happens, Deputy O'Sullivan, you can't deal with this until you provide adequate numbers of houses, apartments and accommodation blocks for people. And that's obviously why the pressure arises here. You're aware of the pilot schemes with the housing assistance programme, so that people don't lose their entire social welfare benefit when they get a job. And you're also aware that you've referred to of the pilot schemes, or the opportunity for community welfare officers to make individual arrangements where this applies. I know the Dublin City Council turned down one of the decisions that the Minister for the Environment had put in place in respect to further temporary accommodation, Devaney Gardens, and these are ongoing problems here. The argument about just increasing the rent supplement plays even further into the hands of landlords. And that's why it's been necessary to have a situation where community welfare officers in individual cases can increase the extent of rent supplement being made available to people who are in trouble. Everybody understands this, and nobody wants to see what's happened over the last 5 or 6 years continue. We can't deal with it, and we won't be able to deal with it until you build more houses and more accommodation. And from that point of view, I'm glad to see that the construction sector is moving. It's up by 11%. The programme set out by the Minister on behalf of the government, with money on the table, is now for the construction industry, the contractors and the builders to get moving. But it also involves the planning authorities to approve the go-ahead for many of these schemes. Deputy Sullivan, there's no argument about the sincerity of the case you raise, or the difficulties that people have. Nobody wants to see families in hotels or families in bed and breakfasts when they should have the opportunity to have their own home, their own house and their own accommodation. And that's where the focus of government has been, and that's where the decisions have been made that this can happen. But like everything else, it just can't happen overnight. So the circumstance where people are in trouble in respect of being moved out by landlords, the code of conduct has changed. Their notification opportunity for community welfare officers to do individual cases for increased rent supplement, to tide that over for a period, is, if you like, a measure. It's not where you want to be. You can't sort all of this out until you provide sufficient accommodation in a city like Dublin or other cities or large towns around the country.
Thank you. Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan.
Taoiseach, if the strategy were working, we would not see increasing numbers of people ending up homeless. And I mean, that is the reality. Rent supplement shouldn't be used as a mechanism for market manipulation. And what we're seeing is the current situation, it's not keeping the rents down.